Hello. Today we're going to look at all kinds of different examples of bar charts that you can do in SharePoint Online. All you need is SharePoint lists, and you can apply templates to those lists to produce all kinds of interesting bar charts. We're going to take a look at examples, and you can see how to do some great charting in SharePoint by following what I show in this video. So now let's get SharePoint smart. Here I am in my SharePoint Online environment, and in this video we're going to take a look at different kinds of bar charts that we can set up inside of SharePoint. So I'm going to my bar charts examples, and we're going to browse through and see different kind of bar charts that you can do. In order to set up these charts, you just need SharePoint lists. You need specific data for those lists, and I'm going to show you what that might look like. In the first bar charts we're going to look at, it's using a single row of data for the list. So in my example, I've got 2018 sales, and then I've got columns for each of the various months. This is one way that you can do your data, and this matches up with a template, which I'll show next. Here are bar charts corresponding to the data we just looked at. So in order to get this, we can apply a template, which I'll show later in the video, and it's also linked below the video in case you want to go ahead and create some bar charts like I show in the presentation. So I've got two different bar charts here for two different years of data. Okay, and then in the next one, we're just going to look at it showing as columns instead of rows. So it's the same data set. It's just that instead of showing it with bars going from left to right, we're doing vertical bars here. We've got columns, so now we can see the January, February, March, etc. going from left to right. It's just a different orientation for the data. And as you can see, I've got a different color scheme. All of that is configurable. You can change everything about the appearance, including all the colors, the fonts, the background, the border, all those type of things are easy to change. Okay, and the next ones are the same type of charts, except they're using data in a different way. So these are multi-data row charts. So I've got a list where I have an individual entry for each row. So that's more typical, and in the next examples it's going to be working from data where you can just keep adding more and more rows as you go. So here we go with the row data again. What you'll notice in this case is there's a bar for each SharePoint record. So in this case I've got various projects and it shows me totals. I've got a label on the right hand side, and then I've got these green bars for each of the SharePoint records. Of course, this is dynamic, so anytime I add a new SharePoint record, or if I change the values in any of these SharePoint records, this chart's going to automatically refresh. And this is just right in my SharePoint list view with the formatting template applied. And here's our columns. So we saw columns before, but again, now we're working with a data set that can grow. I can just keep adding more rows. There's one SharePoint list record per column that you see in this chart. All right, now we're going to get into some more sophisticated examples. The next one we'll look at is stacked bars. The idea here is when you want to show an aggregate of multiple things. So maybe you guys have a monthly sales and you have different categories that you're tracking. Maybe there's some main categories for that, and you want to break it into pieces. So now I could have that subdivided, if you will. So in my case, I've got sales, sales 2, sales 3, sales 4, and sales 5. So these are different categories. I didn't come up with creative names. And then we see those stacked on top of each other, and then a total of those 5 values are shown. So we can color code that with the key that shows on the chart, and now we can differentiate. So we can show the accumulated value, the combined value across more than one category on our chart. And then, as you might expect, maybe I want to show that in columns instead. So here's the same data, and instead of showing it left to right, now we're showing it as vertical columns. So exactly the same data, it's just a different look to the chart. Now I just scroll from left to right to view, the various things in my data. Okay, so those are stacked bar and column charts. Now the next one's going to be group. So instead of stacking those, we could instead show them side by side. So now instead of stacked up on top of each other, for my apples project, I can see each of the categories of sales showing side by side, but they're showing in a group. So as I browse through my data, it's easy for me to identify a specific project, and then I can look over the right, and in essence, each of those records has its own bar chart. And then we've got the vertical representation of that. So that's grouped columns. So same concept, but now we're going bottom to top with the values. So there's the apples project, there's the bananas project. Same concept, it's just a different way to look at the data. So depending on what you're doing, you may select one option over another just to make sure that it looks nice. Okay, we've got a couple more examples that we're going to look at here. So another type of chart that we might want to do is what's called the Marimekko. I'm always worried I'm going to say that wrong. I'm not sure exactly why it has that name, but I'll describe the concept to you. It's an interesting one. So here's the same data, and it's showing everything filling the box, and I'll explain how that works. So from left to right, the percentage of the total value across everything is shown. So what this would tell me is that, I have these silly made up projects, apples project, bananas project. This tells me that the total value for apples project is 9.8% of the total width of my chart. So basically I have a wider column depending on what that is. If you look across, you can see my ice cream project. There's a lot more in this, and so it's something also referred to as an area chart. I have a larger size corresponding to that. So we have that concept from left to right, and then also additionally we have that concept from top to bottom at the same time. So in the case of the ice cream project, for example, this sales category is very large in comparison to the other values. And rather than the value being, based on an explicit number, it's the percentage. So I can see what percentage is that of these overall categories. So it's kind of an interesting concept. It's a different way to surface your data, and that is what is referred to as the Marimekko chart. All right, and one last bar chart that we're going to look at. This one's called a waterfall chart. This is often used in sales to track progress from month to month. And what this is showing is how data moves from month to month. So in this particular example, we're seeing sales across several months running through September. So in January, we went from 0 to 300. And then in the next month, we went up another 200 to 500. Then we went up another 300. And then notice the color changes. So in April, we went down 100. So it shows the difference between the previous month and the next month. It doesn't have to be months. It's just a data series. This could be days. It could be another concept. But this is the idea of a waterfall chart. And so it goes up and down from each successive record. And then at the end, you see the accumulation of all that. So this shows me that we went from zero total sales for the year up to the end value where we have a total of 1,500 at the end. So that's the idea of the waterfall chart. So a lot of different bar chart examples and concepts from which we can draw. So how do you set this up in SharePoint? How can you begin building all of these interesting looking bar charts that handle all kinds of different concepts? So the templates are available here at this site, SharePointDashboards.com. And in order to access those, if you click on Get Started, at the very top of this template gallery screen, you're going to see many charting examples. And the bar chart ones are labeled. So you can see bars, bars group, bars stacked, etc. Those are all available in here. This is part of a subscription that you can sign up for. It's a monthly subscription. You only need to get a license for one user if you only have yourself building charts for your SharePoint environment. If you want to try some of this first, you can get started signing up for a free account, but you will need a subscription in order to do the charting templates. In terms of applying the templates, you can go to these individual template screens, and on each one of them, when you first get there, I recommend you browse through different examples that help you understand the possibilities in terms of how you can make your chart look. All of the colors, the borders, the backgrounds, everything is configurable by just using these sliders and color pickers on the side of the screen. And as you adjust those settings, it's going to show you a real-time preview before you apply that in SharePoint. And then once you're ready, you're going to be able to just click copy, and then you can paste it directly over into your SharePoint view. So here's some more. Here's the bars with multiple rows of data. And again, when you first get in here, and actually, in fact, before you would have a subscription, you can go into these screens to browse different examples of things that you might create and apply in your SharePoint environment. So here's column charts, and this is the column charts with multiple rows of data. And all of this is configurable from the site. One additional thing I should mention, if you really want to do some in-depth training on how to best take advantage of all these templates, there is a hands-on training available. And if you go into the site under Help and click on Charting, there is a complete charts training program that will walk you through hands-on examples. It even gives you files which you can use to load sample data so you can do that in-depth training. And then additional to that, we talked about bar charts today, but there's all kinds of other kinds of charts that you can do. And then there's all kinds of other templates which you can apply in your SharePoint list. So those were 10 different examples of bar charts that you can do in SharePoint. You don't need to install any software in order to set up these templates. These are formatting templates, which you can get by using the tool at SharePointDashboards.com. And you can set up all kinds of different settings in terms of the look and feel. And you just apply this directly on your SharePoint lists. And then you can set up different views and point your users to those views of your charts where you visualize this data. We're going to be doing more of these videos to show different examples of charts. Yesterday we did Gantt charts. You can check that out on this channel. And in our next video, we're going to be taking a look at different examples of line charts that you can do with all kinds of different configurations and options for that. I hope you found that useful, and I hope you're making some awesome bar charts in your SharePoint environment soon. Good luck.